Hi Aquarius, welcome to your October 2019 Astro Update. It's Rena here. So this is going to be a month, Aquarius, where career matters really start to heat up. And I will get to that in a minute, but it's important to note that your ninth house is also in play. The ninth house is the God house. It's the house of expansion. It's the house that Sagittarius and its ruler, Jupiter, rule. And therefore, world travel and expanding your mind through higher education and philosophy, religious studies is featured. It's also the house of publishing. And so the sun is in this house as the month begins. And when the sun is in the ninth house, you may be feeling more optimistic than usual. And you may have an interest in something related to faraway lands, you never know. And we have other triggers to that house. On the 3rd, Mercury, which has been in the ninth house, and by the way, Mercury can be like contracts and documents, paperwork. So maybe you're getting your passport together. Then Mercury on the 3rd is going into the 10th house. The 10th house is a career house. So this is starting that Scorpio, traveling to the 10th house. And these transits there influencing your career. So it's possible that some Aquarians are traveling for their careers, and so they're getting everything together so they can, leave. And Mercury in the 10th could have you speaking to people in positions of authority and also having a public voice of some sort. The 10th house at the top of your chart is your reputation and place in the world. And so it gives you that center stage to make your case to others. Your mind is certainly career focused. And on the same day of the 3rd, Pluto goes direct at 20 degrees of Capricorn in that 12th house. So, Aquarius, since April, when Pluto was in that house. Now, Pluto going retrograde in that house, I checked it out, and Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, I'm sorry, why did I say? Well, Jupiter, they're not all in the same sign. Jupiter is in Sagittarius, but they all went retrograde in April. And for my own life, I said, oh man, that makes perfect sense. So I want you to think back to April, when both Pluto and Saturn, which are transiting through Capricorn, in your 12th house went retrograde. And if there was something very psychologically heavy that kind of descended upon you in the ensuing months. Now, Saturn has gone direct. I'm recording this in September, and Saturn has recently gone direct. Pluto goes direct on the 3rd of October. Pluto retrograde can really bring out the shadow side, and the 12th house is the house of repressed memories. Really, with Pluto there, Aquarius could have had some you might have had some really heavy psychological realizations. Possibly. It's so funny because I just read a comment from somebody and they go, waffle much? Like, I'm not saying things confidently and directly. And yes, I said, yes, I do waffle a lot because you can never guarantee that anybody is going to feel anything. And especially when we're talking about general readings. But even when you're looking at your own chart, it's very important to note that people are not necessarily going to resonate with whatever they're supposed to be dealing with based on their natal charts either. And even if it's exactly what their transit is. These readings are going to be general because your chart depends on your actual degree of a sun or rising, Aquarius. So, I have to keep things general, but by the same token, even if you were to look at things in a personal way, there are no guarantees in life. And I'm just asking if anybody has felt that, who has been an Aquarian, whether it's your sun sign or your rising sign. Have you felt like you've perhaps had a lot of realizations, but they might have been quite challenging, because especially when you're talking about like the shadow that Pluto represents, it's something that the person doesn't necessarily associate with. They kind of distance themselves from that influence, and therefore it creates a disconnect. And when you're disconnected from certain aspects of yourself, you might still be feeling anxiety, depression, confusion. 12th house can be all of these things, but you don't know why, and that can make it hard to change. Now that Pluto is direct from the 3rd of October onwards, you have the opportunity to, continue this work in a more outward manner, even though the 12th house isn't really an outward type of a place. It really still is going to be dealing with your spiritual life, but not as intensely internalized. It's going to have more, you might be seeking outer resources that deal with the spiritual, but that have a transformative effect on you. On the 4th, Mars goes into Libra, that 10th house. That 9th house. And Mars gets you itching to move, to travel, to roam. You may feel like claustrophobic, like you want to roam widely and freely. And so that, syncs up very nicely to the sun being in the 9th house. And Mars in the 9th house can make you very active when it comes to issues surrounding religion. So, thinking about careers that involve travel, maybe you're a yoga teacher and you give retreats and you do it in different countries. And that would certainly go along with that. Maybe you're dealing with some kind of a conflict that involves a university, something to do, some kind of like a dispute. On the 8th, Venus goes into Scorpio, and that for you, Aquarius, is, again, that 10th house. And this may be a situation where you are making a good impression on people that have power, either over you professionally or just in the industry, in the career, the industry that you belong to. With the public, you could have great popularity. This could mean maybe an increase in money with your career. Perhaps you're changing over into something that is more lucrative. On the 13th of the month, we have a full moon at 20 degrees of Aries. So for you, Aquarius, Aries is your third house. And this is the house of communication, teaching and learning. Maybe you have received a certification that has to do with some kind of credentials or some kind of training that you received, and you're done with it. You know, full moons can bring something to a climax, an ending. This can be perhaps, if you are moving by any chance, that there is some kind of ending with your local area. Perhaps it's a significant ending. Maybe you've lived someplace a long time and you're going to be moving far away. One thing that I want to state, because I was trying to think in my mind, okay, well, what about Aquarius's fourth house? Is there anything going on there? Well, your ruler, Uranus, has recently being 6 months ago, gone into Taurus. So Uranus is now transiting your fourth house for, I believe, about the next 7 years. And this can indicate a more transient phase in your life. Maybe you're going to be moving quite frequently. And that might dovetail with some of these transits. They're talking about long distance travel. So, this is just a recent development. So perhaps this is going to be, related to career matters, that you're going to be traveling to different countries. And I think a sign like Aquarius is really down for that, because you do take an interest in people from all walks of life. And so this could be very, expansive for you. Okay. The full moon in the third house could be siblings. Maybe you see a sibling as they really are and you decide to cut ties with them. Or you start to empathize with them. You start to see them. You start to see the true essence of who they are. On the 23rd, the sun goes into Scorpio, that 10th house. So that high powers the career. You start to feel pride about your accomplishments. The sun is just that source of pride, that feeling that you're identifying with what you're doing. And then there's a lot of triggers to that house. So the sun is there the 23rd. The new moon is in Scorpio, either the 27th or the 28th, depending on where you live. And so new beginnings with career, and a Mercury retrograde on the 31st at 27 degrees of Scorpio in that 10th house. So if you are making plans, maybe even with travel or moving into a career, maybe you've already been hired or whatever you want to call it, there may be delays. But delays do not mean that you're not going to do this thing. It just might mean that the timing is not right, and in a few weeks to a month, you might be back on track. So I think that this is a very powerful month for you going into November, Aquarius. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you would like a private reading, a natal chart reading, or what have you, please check out my website, RainaMoonAstrology.com. The link is below. Take care. Bye.